access some of that information. And you can also see how your jurisdiction is performing against other jurisdictions that have been submitting quarterly reports. Again, our goal today is to walk you through how to complete the template and submit in the portal. This training is for jurisdictions that are expected to provide data for April 30th. That's when the Q1 data are due in the portal. And Jay Flowers will walk you through that portal and make sure you have the right access that you need. We will reserve time at the end for questions, but we want to encourage you to please jump in with questions throughout each of our presentation. So don't be shy. And if you are shy and you don't want to be, don't come off mute, you can direct message any of us and we will do our best to help you. And if we cannot answer any questions today, we will ask you to please send it to the mailbox so we have something documented for you. You can save that for your record. I'll stop talking and turn it over to Sue Chang. She will provide an overview of the template and basically the overview of the quarterly reporting requirement. She will also provide some best practices related to program income, admin, and just some tips on what to remember when completing the template to reduce any back and forth once the submission window is closed. Grace will go over how to complete the template. And again, for those first-time reporters, please feel free to stop her if you have any questions. This is a pretty standard process, so it's not as data heavy as the annual reporting for most of you guys that have gone through that. And Jay Flowers, like I mentioned, he will jump in to do a demo of the portal, and this is the same portal you use to access your disbursement and your annual report. So he will provide an overview of that, and he will try to make sure that you have the appropriate access. So he will also ask you to please try to test your access to this training. So if you don't mind, maybe being ready to check that, especially for those first-time reporters. I will stop talking there. Like I stated, if you are shy or not shy, please ask questions. And if you're shy, you can send those questions just through direct message to the team and I. And if you have additional questions after this training, we ask you to please submit it to the mailbox and please include your outreach manager. And we will be here throughout the submission process and future reporting process if you need any help. So this is not the last time you're going to see us. I'll stop talking and I'll turn over to Sue Chang, a compliance analyst, and she will provide an overview of the process and some best practices. Sue, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Mima. I want to first start off by thanking everyone also for their great submission of the 2024 annual reports. We truly appreciate the hard work that went into completing them. In today's training, I will provide an overview of the quarterly reporting requirements, and we'll cover some of the data elements on the quarterly report, and we'll also provide an overview of the unenrollment process. Okay, so we're going to start with the first slide on what is quarterly reporting. Okay, the SSBCI reporting guidance sets out reporting requirements for jurisdictions that receive SSBCI funds. To facilitate your reporting requirement, Treasury has created a customized reporting template for each jurisdiction, and we pre-populate some of the data elements on your template. Please take the time to review the pre-populated data. If any of the information, such as your approved program name, allocation amount for each of your approved program, or the cumulative prior quarter balances is incorrect, please contact us before you submit work. There are 4 key data elements that the jurisdiction should complete on the quarterly report template, which are outlined on this slide. I just want to flag that we removed the reporting requirement for budget amount for contract ending on the Q1 template. Grace will demo on these data elements later in the presentation. We encourage jurisdictions to review the capital guidelines on EOT requirements, as well as the capital program guidance on specific data to report. Okay, moving on to the next slide on when our quarterly reports due. Thanks. The quarterly report must be submitted within 30 days after the end of each quarterly reporting period. For Q1 reporting, the portal is open for submission from April 1st to April 30th, and your jurisdiction customized template for Q1 reporting is currently available to download. We encourage jurisdictions to submit your report before the April 30th deadline. If you have any questions related to the portal or the template, please reach out to your outreach manager as soon as possible. To avoid any issues with uploading or accessing the portal, we recommend not waiting until the last day to submit. We will also send out email reminders to all jurisdictions that are required to report at the beginning of the submission window, and we'll also send additional reminders prior to the deadline. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, each jurisdiction is required to submit quarterly reporting starting with the first full calendar quarter following your executed allocation agreement with Treasury. This means that if your jurisdiction signed the allocation agreement in the fourth quarter, that is in October, November, December of 2024, your first report will be Q1 2025, which covers expanded obligated and transferred data EOT through March 31st. As mentioned earlier in the previous slide, submission deadline for Q1 closes on April 30th. Of course, you may upload your completed template anytime during the submission window, and we encourage jurisdiction to submit before the deadline. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, in this slide, we want to go over reporting guidelines on expanded obligated or transfer, commonly referred to as EOT. The first point I want to clarify is that for quarterly reporting, you are reporting EOT for SSBCI funds only. Private capital is not reported on the quarterly report. All right, starting on the left side for expanded. For a transaction to be considered expanded, SSBCI funds must be disbursed to a specific borrower in a direct lending transaction, disbursed to a lender as part of a set aside to cover a loan guarantee, collateral deposit, or purchase participation for a specific transaction that has closed. And in a cap transaction, SSBCI funds must be disbursed to a lender to cover the federal contribution to the cap reserve account. For a VC and equity direct transaction, SSBCI funds must be directly invested in a specific business pursuant to an executed investment agreement. Okay, moving to the next column, obligated. For a transaction to be considered obligated, SSBCI funds must be committed, pledged, or promised in writing to a lender or borrower as part of a loan participation to a specific borrower, or to a lender to cover a loan guarantee or collateral deposit as part of a loan to a specific borrower. For loan credit transactions, the key to distinguish expanded from obligated is that for obligated transaction, the loan has not contractually closed, whereas for expanded transaction, the loan has closed. For a direct equity transaction to be considered obligated, there should be a signed investment agreement between the jurisdiction or its contracted entity and the investee committing the funds, but the funds have not been received by the business. Lastly, for a VC fund investment to be considered obligated, there should be a commitment to a VC fund through a signed LP agreement, and the obligation is at the fund level. Okay, that covers obligated. The last column is transfer. The main thing to note for transfer is that there should be a documented need to fund a loan transaction or investment or to pay for allowable expenses. Okay, let's move on to the next slide on reporting program EOT and administrative costs. Okay, so for program funds, EOT should only include loans, investment, and funds to be used for 171 fees for services for portfolio companies. All other expenses are considered administrative and should be reported in the administrative cost field. Okay, we'll move on to the next slide on reporting VC fund commitments. Okay, so this slide is relevant to jurisdictions with VC fund program. If your jurisdiction has a VC fund program, please pay close attention and feel free to reach out if you have any questions. For a VC fund transaction, the total SSBCI commitment in a VC fund consists of SSBCI funds for the program, including 171 fees, plus administrative costs. The SSBCI funds for the program, including the 171, are reported under program allocated EOT. And the VC admin costs will be reported under EOT for administrative costs. However, you will only report the expanded portion on the quarterly report. Okay. On this slide, we have provided an example on how to report SSBCI commitment for this ABC Venture Fund. So this ABC Venture Fund has a total commitment of $1 million. The $1 million commitment comprised of $36,000 in budgeted operating expenses, plus $964,000 for the program, including the 171 fees. Additionally, the ABC fund expanded $5,000 of the total $36,000 budget operating expenses for SSBCI's share of the fund formation costs. So how do we report this on the quarter report? Under program allocated EOT, this jurisdiction would report $964,000, which is the SSBCI funds for the program, including 171 fees, as shown on purple on this slide. And under admin cost EOT, you will report the expanded admin only. In this example, you will report the $5,000. Okay, so this covers reporting for SSBCI commitment in a VC fund on your quarterly report. If you, of course, have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. Okay, we'll move on to the next slide. Thank you. On program income. Okay, so program income is defined as gross income received by the jurisdiction that is directly generated by an SSBCI support activity or earned as a result of SSBCI funds during the program period. We've provided some examples of what constitutes program income on this slide. The main one that I want to highlight on this slide is that any interest earned on idle funds held by the jurisdiction or your contracted entity that have not been invested or lent to a small business count as program income and should be reported on the quarterly report. And your jurisdiction should only report the portion of the income that is generated by SSBCI funds. Okay, lastly, in addition to allocated funds, jurisdiction may use program income to pay administrative expenses, which I will demonstrate the process for reporting in the next slide. Okay. Thank you. Okay, admin expenses may be paid using program income, provided that there's sufficient program income. For jurisdictions that want to utilize program income to pay for administrative expenses, it is important to know that any admin expenses that are paid using program income cannot count toward the 80% EOT for your second or third tranche requests. If you decide to use program income to pay administrative expenses, the amount used for admin costs should be deducted from both the program income and admin expenses line via an adjustment on the quarterly report. I will walk through an example of this. Okay, during the quarter, jurisdiction A earned interest on idle funds of $150,000 and utilized $250,000 of cumulative program income to pay administrative expenses. On the quarterly report, jurisdiction A will report the interest earned of $150,000 in the current quarter column under program income. I have shown this in blue on the slide. The $250,000 of cumulative program income that is used to pay administrative expenses will be reported as a negative amount under both program income and admin expenses line via an adjustment on the quarterly report. And I've shown this on the slide in red. Lastly, please provide an explanation in the comments section of the quarterly report for the adjustment. Okay, so this If you have any questions on how to report the use of program income to pay admin expenses, please reach out to us. And I just want to reiterate again that if any admin expenses were paid using program income, those admin expenses, in this example, the $250,000, cannot be counted towards the 80% EOT requirement for your second and third tranche requests and should not be reported on the disbursement request form. Okay, next slide, I'm going to cover reporting recycle funds. The most important thing to keep in mind is that SSBCI funds are only considered recycle funds once the funds are redeployed into new loans or investment. Until the funds are redeployed into new loans or investment, jurisdictions should hold any return SSBCI invested capital. However, any interest on the return capital prior to redeployment must be reported as program income. I'm going to walk you through an example for reporting recycle funds. Okay. First, jurisdiction Z received $50,000 repayment for principal in Q3. Of that $50,000, the jurisdiction recycles $25,000 into a new loan at the beginning of fourth quarter and maintains the remaining $25,000 in an interest-bearing account, earning $800 during Q4. How should the jurisdiction report this on their Q4 report? The jurisdiction to report $25,000 under recycle funds EOT in the current quarter column for Q4 report. This is the portion that was recycled into a new loan.
Oh, shoot.
The jurisdiction, okay. The jurisdiction will also report the $800 interest income under program income in the current quarter column for Q4. There are two important elements to note here. First, the full $50,000 in repayment of principal received in the third quarter is not considered recycled. Only the amount that was actually recycled into new loans will be reported as recycled. And any interest earned on the SSBCI funds should be reported each quarter as program income. Okay, we will move on to the next one on adjustments to quarter report. Okay, adjustments to your prior quarter data can be made on your current quarter report. The reasons for adjustments may include removing an obligated loan or investment that is no longer expected to close, correcting a clerical error such as transposition of a number, or when directed by SSBCI. If you have adjustments to report, please provide a brief explanation for the adjustment in the additional information section of the quarterly report. We have listed some examples on this slide you may consider when providing your explanation. While there's no character limit, your explanation should be brief and should include an explanation regarding the full amount of the adjustment. I just want to note that for jurisdictions that signed the allocation agreement in the fourth quarter of 2024, Q1, the first quarter, would be the first time that your jurisdiction reports. So there shouldn't be any adjustment. Adjustment is meant for adjusting prior quarter data that were submitted to Treasury. For jurisdictions that are reporting for the first time, I will walk you through how to report prior quarter information in the next slide. Okay, thank you. For jurisdictions that are reporting for the first time and have EOT'd from a quarter prior to their first quarterly reporting period, jurisdictions should report the prior quarter activity along with your current quarter activity in the current quarter field and not report the activity as an adjustment. For example, if a jurisdiction executed the allocation agreement in October of 2024 in EOT funds of $100 in their LPP program, and during the first quarter which is the first time that this jurisdiction would be reporting, the jurisdiction EOT'd additional $200 of SSBCI funds. For Q1 reporting, the jurisdiction should input $300 in the current quarter input field. Another example would be if a jurisdiction has program income from the quarter prior to the required reporting period. The jurisdiction should report the prior quarter income along with the current quarter prior program income in the current quarter field of the quarter report. Okay, so that covers reporting prior quarter. We'll move on to unenrollment. Okay, in the next two slides, I will provide an overview of the unenrollment process. Okay, a potential non-compliant transaction may be identified by either the jurisdiction or Treasury. Treasury's written approval is needed before a jurisdiction can unenroll a closed non-compliant transaction. And to clarify, closed transaction means expanded transaction. If your jurisdiction identifies a potential non-compliant closed transaction, please reach out to your outreach manager prior to taking any action. Whether the non-compliant transaction is identified by the jurisdiction or Treasury, the first step in the unenrollment process is for jurisdiction to provide Treasury with an unenrollment request letter and a supporting document, which we refer to as Attachment A. Attachment A is just an Excel template provided by Treasury to gather information related to a potential non-compliant transaction, such as the provider information, amount of SSBCI involved, and description of the issue. The unenrollment request letter should state how the non-compliant transaction was discovered, what internal controls measure the jurisdiction has taken to mitigate that particular risk of non-compliance, and how the jurisdiction proposed to replenish the SSBCI account. Treasury would then review the request letter and Attachment A, and Treasury will confirm Treasury's agreement by providing the jurisdiction with a conditional approval email. The conditional approval will ask the jurisdiction to provide the supporting documentation demonstrating that the jurisdiction has replenished the SSBCI account for the amount of the unenrollment. Okay, move on to the next slide. Okay. Once Treasury receives the sufficient supporting documentation demonstrating that the jurisdiction has replenished the SSBCI's account, Treasury will send jurisdiction an acknowledgement email. The acknowledgement email closes out the unenrollment process. When you receive the acknowledgement letter indicating that the unenrollment process is completed, jurisdictions should then report the unenrolled amount as an adjustment on the quarterly report. While the unenrollment is in process, the jurisdiction will be required to provide the modified certification on the use of allocated funds when submitting your quarterly report. The modified certification states that your jurisdiction is implementing its approved SSBCI programs in accordance with program requirements, except for the identified non-compliant transactions, which I highlighted on this slide. If you have potential non-compliant transaction and you don't see the modified cert language in Section 4 of the portal, please reach out to your outreach manager immediately, and we will work with you to change the modified cert in the portal before you submit your quarterly report. Jurisdictions can identify the modified cert in two places. On the Section 4 tab at the top of the section, both are shown here, circled in red. If you do not see the modified cert, you're submitting the standard cert. So please pay close attention to ensure you are certifying the appropriate certification. And Jay will cover their certification process in the portal later in the training. We want to emphasize again to reach out to your outreach manager to discuss any potential non-compliant transaction. And before we move to the next slide, I just want to point out that Treasury's approval of any unenrollment and replenishment does not preclude the OIG from conducting its own review. Okay, thank you. Okay, on this slide, we put together a few quarterly reporting tips that you might find helpful when you complete your quarterly report. The quarterly report template contains data validations and conditional formatting, which Grace will show you later in the presentation. The most important thing to note is that please do not submit your quarterly report if any of the fields are red. If you're unsure how to correct the fields that turns red, please reach out to us before submitting your quarterly report. The one thing I want to highlight is to check that the sum of your program EOT and your admin EOT do not exceed your jurisdiction cumulative disbursed amount. That is, you should not report more than what has been dispersed to your jurisdiction. Okay, moving on to, I think, my final slide. Thank you. Okay. A user will have a different level of access based on your assigned role in the portal. Jay Flowers will be going over the different level of access in his demonstration, but I just want to highlight the different levels here. The most restrictive role is the account administrator. This user can only view and download the template. The second level is the account point of contact role. This user is able to view and download template, but this user cannot, this user can also upload, they can upload a completed report. The authorized representative role can view, download, and upload a complete report, but is the only user who can certify and submit a report, right? If a user does not have an authorized representative role, an error message will appear, preventing the user from submitting the report. So if you're in charge of submitting your quarterly report, please make sure you have an authorized representative role in the SSBCI Capital Reporting Portal. Okay, I think that concludes my part of the presentation. I'm happy to take any questions. You can go off mute, or you can, feel free to drop your questions in the chat. You will also have an opportunity to ask questions at the end as well. So whatever you guys, however comfortable you are. If not, I will pass it over to Grace. We'll cover how to complete the template.
Hey, Grace and Sue, can I just emphasize on enrollment? Please do not proceed with replenishment until you receive the conditional approval from Treasury. We want to make sure that you have all the communication just in case the IG comes and asks those questions or look into those particular transactions. So we always recommend, once we identify a non-compliant transaction, please hold on replenishment until you receive that unconditional approval from Treasury. Like Sue stated, that's not going to prevent the IG from doing their own review. But at a minimum, once you have that approval and it aligns with your replenishment timeline, you will have that support from Treasury. So just keep that in mind, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll go ahead and get started with the demonstration of the template. So on screen now, you should be seeing an Excel workbook. And like Sue mentioned, this workbook will be customized for your specific participating jurisdiction and pre-populated with your program information. So please make sure that you have the correct one when you go onto the portal. In the quarterly reporting template, there's two different types of data in here. So all of the gray cells are going to be pre-populated for you and not editable. You'll see if you're clicking on these, nothing's happening. The only part of the quarterly report template that you need to interact with is going to be these white cells where you can enter your EOT information. And there are 4 different sections of the quarterly report. So up at the top here, you have your participating jurisdiction information. the reporting period start and end date, which is January 1st, 2025 through March 31st, 2025. So all of the data in the report for this quarter will be as of March 31st. And of course, the submission deadline is April 30th at the end of the month here. Participating jurisdiction, this will just be the name of your jurisdiction. You can confirm that you have the correct template. And then you'll also see your total potential allocation and cumulative funds dispersed. For many of the data elements in the template, if you have a question about what exactly that includes, or a greater description, if you hover over any of these little red marks, it will give you the description of that particular data element. So for total potential allocation, that's going to include all of the funding that you can potentially receive throughout the SSBCI program. And then cumulative funds dispersed will tell you how much funding has been sent to you already. It'll be approximately 33, 34 of your total potential allocation, depending if you're in the first, second, or third tranche of your funding. The next section will be your program information. So between 1 and however many programs you have, you'll see those populated here. This section will cover administrative costs. And then the final section here is program income and cap charge-offs, and then that comment space. If you have previously submitted a quarterly report, you may notice that there was another section that used to reference contracted entity budgets. That has been removed from the capital program reporting guidance. You're no longer required to submit that information, so it's also been removed from the quarterly report. I will go ahead into the details of how you can complete this now. So starting in the program section, we're going to go through how to report for each of your individual programs. So as you can see, we will pre-populate the approved program name, the program type, your program administrator, as well as the program allocation. Again, if any of this pre-populated data is incorrect, please reach out and we'll get that corrected for you. This is either going to come from your original application or be consistent with any modifications that have been approved by Treasury. All right, so this next section here will be your EOT information. If this is your first time reporting, cumulative as of prior quarter end will be all 0 since you haven't reported anything yet. And if it's a subsequent quarter of reporting, we will pre-populate this with your cumulative as of current quarter from Q4 2024. So we'll go ahead and start filling out our information. Let's say in our loan participation program, we have $5 million EOT for this quarter. We'll go ahead and just enter that in. Let's say we don't have any EOT for our collateral support program. And for our venture fund program, let's say we have 3 million, or let's say we have 4 million. So if we enter that 4 million, you'll see we get a pop-up error. So this is one of the validations that Sue was discussing. These ones should be pretty straightforward for you to clear up. You can see it gives you a list of reasons as to what may be causing the issue. In this case, we fall under category number 3. So our current quarter amount plus our adjustments in prior quarter end exceeds our program allocation. So 6 million plus 4 million is obviously 10 million, but our program allocation is only 9 million. So we can't exceed that amount. Again, if you do have like a modification or something, please just reach out and we can get your template updated if it isn't already. So let's go ahead and try $3 million instead. And that will bring us to our $9 million total. So as you can see, we didn't get a pop-up that time, but we do still have some red on our template. So again, this is what Sue was talking about. Please don't submit if you see these red highlighted cells. In this case, the reason we're getting that red highlight is even though we stayed within our program allocation numbers here, the total EOT across all of our programs is 26.4 million, and our EOT from our administrative expenses is 1.2 million, When you add that up, you get 27.6, which is greater than the amount of funds that have been dispersed to this jurisdiction. So obviously you can't expend more than you've received. So your total EOT across your program and your administrative expenses needs to be less than your cumulative funds dispersed. So again, I'll make just another small adjustment here. We'll go down to 2.5 million. And we'll call that our EOT for our venture fund program. And then for our last two programs, again, we'll say we don't have any EOT for those. If you do need to make an adjustment, that can be done. Maybe we need to make an adjustment in our loan guarantee program. Again, please just review what Sue mentioned in terms of allowable reasons for adjustment. In this case, we'll say maybe there was an $80,000 obligation that didn't end up closing. So as you can see, I put negative $80,000 into our adjustment. And I want to come down here in my comments for the LGP program. We have a $80,000 adjustment for obligation that did not close. So that would be a sufficient explanation. And then just scrolling back up a little bit, we'll come over here. If you do have any recycled funding to report or any adjustments to recycled funding, you can do that in the next section. We don't expect that to be very common this early on in the program, but as you continue and you can start recycling or reusing some of your SSBCI allocated funding for additional investments, you can report that here. All right, I'll go ahead and move on to administrative costs and program income. So as you can see here in the administrative cost section, there's a few things going on. So you'll have your administrative costs to report direct and indirect. And again, this is reported across the entire jurisdiction, not to a specific program. And there is a requirement that only a certain percentage of the funds of the SSBCI allocated funds be used towards your administrative costs. So that is 5% of the first tranche, and then I believe 3% of the second and third tranche respectively. So we will translate that to you in a dollar amount, which you can see is your administrative cost threshold. So this participating jurisdiction is still in their first tranche of funding, so they can use up to 5% of their total funds, or 1.3 approximately $1 million in administrative costs. Once you receive your second or third tranche of funding, you'll see the increased administrative cost threshold reflected on your quarterly report. So we've already spent 1.2 and our max is 3.76 million. Let's say that we have another $300,000 in administrative costs. How would you go about reporting that? So as you can see, if you try to enter that 300,000 just directly into the template, it's going to throw an error because you're exceeding your administrative cost threshold. One of the options would be to offset with the program income. So I'll show you, just like Sue mentioned, how you can do that. Let's say we're going to use $200,000 of our program income and then another $100,000 of our remaining administrative costs to get to that $300,000 for the current quarter. So what you would do is you would make a negative adjustment of $200,000 in your program income, and then you'd also make a negative adjustment in your direct administrative costs of that same amount. And then you can enter your $300,000. So that is what you would do if you're going to be using your program income to offset your administrative expenses. Of course, if you have any indirect expenses, you can report those. For program income here, if you have any program income for the current quarter, you can report that on top of your adjustment. And then similarly, of course, if you have any cap charge-offs to report, that goes in this section. And we will want to make one final note regarding that program income and administrative cost adjustment. So used 200,000 in program income to offset administrative expense. And again, that is sufficient comment for the adjustment. And that is everything that you need to do for your quarterly report. I'll pause if there's any questions. Okay, we'll go ahead and put anything in the chat if it comes up. If not, I will pass it off to Jay, who's going to do a portal demo for you. Thank you.
Inside of the chat, I just placed 2 links to the SSBCI portal. And we're going to take a minute while I get my environment set up to do the demo for anyone that has either not logged in a while or is the first time logging into the portal, just to make sure that you are able to access everything that you need to access in order to submit your quarterly report. So I'm going to give another minute. I'm still going to keep it open just in case anyone has a question. And then I'm going to come back and then we're going to get started with the portal demo. Okay, it looks like my environment loaded up pretty quickly, so this should be a good demo today. It doesn't seem like or doesn't look like or sound like there's any questions at this point. So we're going to go ahead and get started. The first thing I wanted to say before we get started is that we've had a few reports that we had some users that weren't able to get to the portal. And what they were receiving when they tried to log in is they receiving a compliance landing page. And the compliance landing page looks like what is showing now. If you are receiving this compliance page when you're logging in using either one of those links inside of the chat, please let us know that you are receiving that, and we can flip everything on our side to make sure that you're able to get to the SSBCI portal while maintaining your access to this compliance area inside of the portal. The first one is the link that we have sitting there is going to be the portal.treasury.gov CARES S. That is going to be a program landing page. So it's going to show you all of the Treasury's programs. And just a minute ago, I was showing you this compliance portal. Once we flip you over to the SSBCI accessible environment, you're still going to have access to that compliance portal by clicking on this state, local, and tribal support. So you see, as I click this looks very similar to what I showed you a second ago as the compliance process report. It's just a little different environment, little different user experience, but you still maintain all of your submissions, all of your compliance reports and everything like that. We just need to get you flipped over to the CARES Act login so you have access to the SSBCI portal. And then once you do have that access, we just ask you to click on that first link that I had in the chat to allow you to have access to the program landing page so you can get to your compliance area. Now, when you're ready to come in and you're submitting your quarterly report through SSBCI, you just scroll down just a little further and you're going to see the SSBCI program tile. And you click that and that takes you to the SSBCI landing page. This is the same link that is the second link that I put inside the chat. So if you have no compliance link access, you just straight SSBCI, you can use either link, one by clicking the green tile, or you can use a second link that has SSBCI homepage as the suffix, and that will take you straight to the SSBCI landing page. So today we're going to take a look at 2 demos. First one is going to be the standard compliant submission for your quarterly report. The second one is going to be the modified submission, the one that Sue had mentioned a little bit earlier. And this is the one that's going to be for the potentially non-compliant transactions or issues. So we're going to jump into the quarterly report area, and it's going to be the capital program report tab on the left. If you click that, then it defaults to quarterly reports over here. And I'm just going to reload everything to make sure it's picking up me logging in to show you everything during this demo. If not, it'll take me a second or two to come back. Every once in a while, everything kind of gets jammed up. And then we just have to come back in and re-log back in, and then we can start to get started. So we'll click in, we're going to log into the CARES Act. This is just my back end. You guys won't see this. But once you're here and you hit dismiss, again, you can come down to SSBCI program tile and you can come over to capital program reports. And then you're going to have your quarterly reports listed. You're not going to have as much as I have. This is my testing environment. So I have a bunch of testing records in here. But we're going to select the one that is going to be for the current quarter, which is going to be this first one for your standard one. This is the one that's the reporting period January 1 through March 31st, 2025. So when you see this in your blue table for quarterly reports, you should see a blue pencil icon because we are within the submission period. Just simply click on that and that opens up your quarterly report for this quarter. So just a little bit of navigation tips. On the left-hand side, you have these areas that you can click through each section. And then you also have over here a widget that shows what the status of your quarterly report is. It tells you jurisdiction, the reporting period, and the deadline for submitting your quarterly report. So I'm going to jump over to section 2 as a navigation example, section 3. And towards the bottom, I'm also going to have it back. So I can go back to the previous section by using the back button as well. So we are on page 1. The first thing you're going to see when you log in bright red is going to be the period, which is going to be January 1 through March 31 of 2025. You're going to have the submission window, which is going to be April 1 through April 30th, 2025. And you're going to have a couple of resources on this page. You're going to have the capital program reporting guidance here. You're going to have the policy guidelines here. And then you're going to have the quarterly report user guide here. If you have any questions or issues while you're trying to submit your quarterly report, we also provide you with SSBCI_information at treasury.gov email address. And we just ask if you have any issues throughout the submission process that you email us at the SSBCI_information at treasury.gov. And we always ask you to include your outreach manager because they're going to help stay on top of us to make sure that we're going to answer your questions in a timely fashion. So we're going to move over to section 2, which is going to be your participating jurisdiction information. This first top blue box is going to have your implementing entity information. We just ask that you verify everything that's here is correct. And again, if you have any issues with that, just reach out to us at the SSBCI_information at Treasury inbox, including your outreach manager. The second area down the bottom is going to be for contacts. We realize that some jurisdictions have a totally separate reporting team from the team that is going to be managing the program itself. So we wanted to provide an area where you can see what individuals are lined up on your account. And then we also have an area right here. If you click this word page, it takes you over to the COVID-19 Relief Hub, where you have the ability to add or you have the ability to update users on your account. Your first time in, you're going to have to click this submission or certification tab. This designation form will not show for the first time. Just add your name here, click submit, and this is basically saying you are the one that is able to add or manipulate users in the account. Once you do submit here, this designation form line will show. So we'll jump straight into the designation form line. And we're going to scroll down. There's a little bit of intro text here, but we're going to scroll down to the designated contacts area where you have the ability to add a new contact, and you also have the ability to edit a current contact. So we're going to click the edit button to jump into this case record. And you have the first name, last name, the title, email address, and then you have the different roles that you can select here. Again, this is my testing environment, so we've pulled out a few roles while we were doing some testing. But essentially, there are going to be 3 different roles, and Sue mentioned a little earlier. The first one is going to be SSBCI Account Administrator. and this is the one that can view and download the quarterly report. We also have SSBCI Capital Account POC, where this person can view and download the custom template, but they also have the ability to upload that template to the portal. The third role that you're going to select over here, or you have the options to select over here, is going to be the SSBCI Capital Authorized Representative. And this is a role. This is not to be conflated with the authorized official on your application. That role, that one is for the person that has the ability to submit on behalf or sign on behalf of your jurisdiction. This one, which is going to be the account representative, is just a role which tells you what level of access that person has inside of the portal. We've also added, and if you haven't been on here in a while, we've also added a communications role area over to the right. And this essentially just says, okay, what kind of information do I want to receive from SSBCI? Is it going to be capital reporting related, TA reporting related, or SPOT reporting related, or none? So we ask you just to select which type of information or communication you want to receive from SSBCI in terms of the program and the reporting. Once you have your role selected, you would just hit save over here, and then that would save that information to that current record. I'm not going to do that in my environment, testing environment, but we are going to show that you also have the same thing here, same function, in terms of you can add a new contact here. Very similar, just add all the things that have an asterisk, and then select your roles that you would like that individual to have inside of the portal. Once you have all those roles updated, it will show as an update inside of the context table. You may have to refresh your page, and in refreshing your page will put that new person, if that is a new user, or will show the different roles that were audited or changed up when you went inside to update that person's contact record. So that's section 2. We're going to move over to section 3, which is the Excel upload section. So this is the area where you would have just a brief description about the data file upload and what we're expecting. If you look down just a little further, you have this line here, please download your designated template, and you have the word here. This is where you just click to get your customized quarterly report for your jurisdiction. And once you have that filled in and you're ready to submit, you can save that on your computer, and then you can access and upload it using this upload files button here. We will click that, and then we're going to navigate over to where you save that file. I'm going to highlight that file and click open. It should add it to a box down below. After this word done turns blue, we'll click that. And then you'll see a table appear down here with the report that you just uploaded. And don't be surprised when you see final underscore in front of it. We just added that as a naming convention for us to know that this was the final report that was submitted within the portal. If you made a mistake when you were uploading that report, you do have the ability to click that box that was right next to the report name, and you can click delete files and then repeat the process by going in and clicking upload files, navigating to that template that you filled in, click open, wait for this to turn blue. You're going to click that, and then your table is going to populate with your quarterly report. The last section is going to be your certified and submission page. We click here. Give me 1 second for this to reload. Apologies for that. It may make me log back in, which is no problem. Give me 1 second while I get back to that area. Okay, I believe we were on section 4 after we've uploaded everything in section 3 for the Excel upload area. So we're going to jump over to the certification and submission page. And when you're ready to submit, we always advise to copy your name that you see over here, paste it into the white box over here. And we say that because this white box is both case and space sensitive. And if you guys notice, I just turned my capital S to a lowercase s. And if I hit certify and submit, I'm going to get a submission error up top. So again, always copy it exactly how you see it over here, drop it in here, and then you can click certify and submit. You should get a green success banner towards the top. You also should see it populate down in the bottom that everything has been successful. I'm just going to go ahead and refresh that page. And I'm going to make sure we're back on section 4, and then you'll see a green confirmation that everything has been submitted. And also on the widget on the top right, you're going to see the status of submitted. So that was a standard compliant transaction submission. We're going to jump in and we're going to do a modified submission. And that is a toggle that we flip on our side. And then once you have that already toggled off, as Sue mentioned, this section 4 is going to switch and it's going to now say modified certification and submission page. Section 1, section 2, and section 3 are exactly the same. So you can come through 1, read everything, make sure everything is good with the implementing entity here. If you need to update contacts, you can do that here. Move to section 3. We're going to upload your quarterly report, which you've downloaded and filled in. And we're going to drop that in on section 3. You click that when it turns blue, and you'll see that populate into the table. Now we can move over to section 4, where we have a lot of the text over here explaining what exactly is happening in section 4. So we advise you to read all of that. And then we scroll down towards the bottom, you're going to see an attachment A. You can click that, and that is where you can enter the explanations of the things that may be considered a non-compliant transaction or issues. Once you have that filled in, you have another upload area, so you can click upload files, and then you can select your file that you're going to submit with those explanations. Hit open, click done. It's in the table, and again, we put a prefix of AA cert underscore in front of the name that you named it. Once everything is uploaded here, we are ready to submit this modified certification. And again, copy your name here, paste it in there, click certify and submit. You'll see a green banner across the top that it was successful. And in this time, it propagated very quickly, and it gave you a green confirmation at the bottom. And it also changed the widget up top to submitted. So I think that is it for the demo. And again, we really encourage you guys to log in as soon as possible. I mean, you can log in today, and if you have any issues, let us know. We'll be able to take care of you. The other thing that we talked about today is that there are 2 different logins that people may have. One is to that compliant area. Let us know if you are receiving that, because we are going to have to update you in the system. And then once we update you in the system, you should use that first link in the chat to get to the programs landing page in order to get to your compliance area, which you previously had access to. And then also you have the SSBCI program tile at the bottom, which would get you over to the area where you can submit your quarterly report. So I think that wraps it up for the demo. If there are any questions, we're going to leave it open while I pass it back over to Sue. Thanks, guys.
Hey, Jay, I will take the baton from you. I just want to flag, I put a question from Courtney in the direct message to you. They try to access both links, and they're getting a message that Safari cannot open this page.
Yeah, that may be something. I think we had some communication back and forth with according to Lance a little bit ago. It may be a browser thing, and I can take that offline. I still have an email with that issue in there. We may have to try to see if we can get your IT department to help out. I don't know if you have any other browsers that you can open, for example, Microsoft Edge or Chrome. We know that those 2 have the most seamless interaction with our systems. Otherwise, I can reach out to you, Courtney, to Lance, and try to figure something out. But I would see if you have any of those other two browsers, or maybe if you have the ability to catch up with your IT folks, maybe connect up with them and see if they have any other suggestions. But I'll reach out to you, Courtney.
Thank you so much, Jay. Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Grace, for the overview of the template, and thank you, Jay. We'll move on to the reporting deadline. Just want to highlight our next reporting deadline. This discussion will be due April 30th. And like Jay encouraged us to try to access and try to submit your report as soon as possible. And if you run into anything after this training, please reach out to us via your Irish manager, and we will either set up some time with you or provide any questions, responses to any questions that you may have. I know there's a lot of folks reporting for the first time. The next round of quarterly that will be due will be from data from April 1 to June 30th, and that will be due July 30th. So we will send out some communication regarding that once the window opens. I think we can move on to, and just as a reminder, just for everyone that submitted annual reports that will do March 31st, thanks for providing your reports. We're still going through that data, so we will reach out to you to do some data cleanup. We do appreciate your timely submission and working with us clean up the 2024 data. Thank you so much. We can move on to the next report. These are resources that have been discussed throughout this training, our policy guidelines, our reporting guidance that shows the data elements for quarterly and annual. So please feel to reference those. We updated those in December, the reporting guidance. Our national compliance standard, we always recommend that as best practices. You can use that also to incorporate some good practices to make sure that you're reviewing your transactions prior to those transactions being closed. So please have a process where you're reviewing your transactions. FAQs, we update those more frequently than our policy. So please refer to those if you have any questions. Always recommend folks to reference the IG audits from 1.0. Those are really good information, and you can adopt some best practices to ensure program compliance and some good internal controls. And of course, to CFR to make sure all your admin costs are compliant. We've been generating summary reports. I don't know how long, but we've added the link to the Q4 summary. So if you want to just glance at that information to compare yourself against other jurisdictions and your EOT, that's really good information on good data point. We will release those after each quarter. So this link will give you access to that information. I will stop talking, but just want to flag if you have any questions, please submit them through the mailbox. We always recommend that you receive written responses that will give you some coverage if anything happens or any policy changes. I will stop talking, and hopefully you can come off mute if you have some questions. If not, we can stay for a couple of minutes, but feel free to drop. We will share this deck hopefully by the end of this week, and we will also provide the training links through access to get prepared as you April 30th get closer. But again, we recommend that the early submission is always what we recommend. And thank you for joining us today for this training. Really appreciate all your support. Okay, I'll stop talking. Thank you. Please come off mute, Courtney. So others are still on. Let us know if you have any questions. We'll stay on for another couple of minutes. And thank you, Courtney.
Thank you guys for helping.
Anytime. Courtney, let us know if you also know who your Irish manager is. If you don't, we're happy to provide that information to you, but I'm sure you already have that.
Okay, thanks.
Perfect. Anyone else? Okay, I'm happy to give you a few minutes back. Again, we appreciate you taking time to join us. Hopefully you found some of this information useful. We will share the recording so you can reference it from time to time. If you have any questions on reporting on compliance, please reach out to your Irish manager. If you need time with the compliance team, we're always here to help. We just ask you to coordinate it through your Irish manager to make sure they're in the loop. Always, if you have questions, we do ask you to please send those questions in advance. to make sure that we are prepared. And again, I always recommend that you try to get your questions, provide a written response on your questions. But again, we always appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Have a great day.